I'll be forthright with my point. America is devoid of cultural elements and lacks cohesion as a whole. It is nothing more than a chaotic mosh pit of a talentless rock concert. The Republic is a complete failure, and it was doomed to be so from the start. Our society is not okay. Violent crime runs rampant through the land, and people cannot even walk down the sidewalk safely anymore. Is it a coincidence that this happened with every single republic that has ever come into history? One could argue that correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation. However, when we see this pattern continuously, we have every right to suspect that there is a relation between the two. We need a radical Japanese takeover of our civilization. Their traditions stretch back into prehistory, and some have even survived to the current day. Their civilization is waning, but it was after nuclear weaponry, a crime against humanity, was used. There is no other society which has had the endurance of Japan. Am I crazy for suggesting such a thing? Does it even make sense to bring Japanese culture to a people who have never dealt with it? Many state that it is ridiculous simply due to the fact that we are not Japanese. I'd like to remind people that Shinto, the native religion of Japan, was adapted in part from the Ainu people. These people, aside from the ones who have mixed into the population, and now they're all mixed, but these people originally had no genetic ties to the Japanese people. Shinto came to be influenced by Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, and shamanism. Obviously, the first three came into Japan through interaction with China. We all know, this is common knowledge. Confucius was Chinese, Lao Tzu was Chinese, Buddhism came from China, even the Zen school, Bodhidharma, and various elements of shamanism also came in from China. The Japanese word Shinto is a corruption of Shen Dao, which is Chinese for way of the gods, and in Japanese you say Kami no Michi, but Shinto has stuck. The Japanese people were not born with these ideologies imprinted into their skull. Many of the shamanist inclinations came from mainland China as well. Many of the characters within the Japanese language were borrowed from the Chinese language. Traditional Japanese society had the aspect of progress along with reverence for nature. The balance between these two is something I have not seen to the same extent within any other culture. Someone had suggested conversion to a satru, but this won't do. It's amazing that people laugh about adopting Japanese culture, but they do not consider for a moment that most Europeans do not speak Icelandic. They don't want an Icelandic religion. Not all Europeans are northern Europeans, and yes, the culture has differed greatly at times between the two. I am part Sicilian, and we don't have enough information available to revive our pre-Christian religion of Sicily. Simply did not hold very long against Christianity. The imagery of a satru is that of Northern Europe, which is different from that of America. That goes without saying. So those claiming that the imagery of Shinto does not match, they're not providing the same critique to their own belief system. Local deities have been acknowledged throughout the history of Shinto. Also, following all of the deities is not something essential. Someone's entire life could be spent in devotion of one particular kami. When it comes to the North American adaptation, we could keep the deities relevant to us, who are not local ones, universal ones such as the sun goddess Amaterasu, and we can hold the ones which are specific to Japan, their local deities, to be irrelevant to us. The future may even change the language used to name even the main deities of Shinto. Perhaps even the name Shinto will be discarded. I'm not interested in the lingual technicalities, but in the essence of Japanese culture. The language itself is secondary and perhaps not necessary. There are problems with the English language, though, such as inconsistent wording. We also lack a proper inner esoteric core of our language. The rules in English are not consistent. They change. It's not particularly, it's not always clear what's being said. So perhaps we could model a new English after the Japanese language. After some of its structure, we could import some of that over into English and find ways to improve it using the Japanese language as a model. I'm not a linguist, so that's why I say perhaps. I don't know. I'm suggesting a localized version of Japanese culture. Over time, it will become something beautiful in itself, and we won't need to refer to it as Japanese. However, I'd like to use this as a model because it's worked. The idea of Japanese influence would probably remain, though. The Japanese fully acknowledge the Chinese sources of those aspects of their culture. They reconciled these elements of Chinese culture, arguably, better than the Chinese people did themselves. So it is possible to be successful at integrating something not indigenous to the land in question. Of course, adaptations would be made in order to match the environment we have on different parts of the continent, different local deities, for example. But overall, in an overall structure, our society needs cohesion. Japanese culture unified the various walks of life existing in Japan. We need unifying elements to do just that in our society. Exactly what a Japanese cultural takeover would look like in the long run is impossible to actually know. The USA, or this entire continent maybe, needs its own imperial family, with myth tied into the story. Perhaps we will need, so to say, Japanese radicals to mold such a family. They would need to train them in function and etiquette. The people of the USA or North America, perhaps, would need to properly understand the mandate of heaven. If the rulers are not carrying out their proper function, people need to realize that they do not have the mandate of heaven. It is within people's every right to disobey and revolt against them. Confucius did not lay down a system of absolute totalitarianism. There is a natural hierarchy that develops within his meritocratic system. Yes. However, there are clear rules which are laid down. Anybody can read the Analects and observe these. English should be made much more specific in its lingual quality if this is possible. I'm not a linguist. So that when these rules are taught to society at large, there's no ambiguity, there's no mistake as to what these rules mean. They're absolutely clear. They're absolutely precise. People have to know. So that people can't be tricked into saying, well, we didn't mean this word this way. But according to the mandate of heaven, royal families and leaders come and go throughout history. Nothing lasts forever. No royal family stays there forever. It could be replaced, or you could have a system of a king who is not attached to a royal family, but you have many different ways that this can go. But the republic doesn't work. Democracy doesn't work. Majority rule doesn't work. It's madness. We've seen chaos, we've seen trouble in every single country that's adopted it. We need to keep on guard against subversive cultural elements that would slip into that society. Sometimes there's no point of return. We're at the point of no return sometimes, and society has to be remade anew. This is what we have to do with our society. There are is no specific American culture that can be said to be worth shit. It's not worth anything. Cheeseburgers and French fries and going out to the movies is not a culture. That's insanity. So join my fight and importing a workable culture into the American continent. Thank you.